Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Today is Wednesday, January 26, 2022. So we got plenty to get to today. We'll discuss more of the conference championships. Bruce Marshall, NFL money leader on Vegas Insider. And we'll talk to Bruce in just a few minutes. Also, Stephanie Otey is going to join us in a moment as well. So we'll talk NFL. NBA last night, you had that crazy comeback by the Clippers or crazy meltdown by the Wizards, depending on how you look at it. Also, we'll hit on some college basketball. UCLA knocking off Arizona late night last night. Big game inside the Pac-12. Also, we'll look ahead of some of the games tonight in the NBA and college basketball with Bruce Marshall. But before we get to all of that, I want to tell you about BetMGM. They are the king of sports books, and they are legal right now in New York. And the BetMGM bonus code VI bonus will help sportsbook users, new ones, up to a risk-free bet of $1,000. The BetMGM casino bonus code is VI bonus, and when used, you'll receive $25 in free play. No deposit required. A 100% first deposit match up to $1,000. Remember that bonus code VI bonus. $25 no deposit free casino game, plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. And also enter the VI bonus code on the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. Check out BetMGM now, and also legal in New York. So BetMGM, they are the king of sportsbooks. All right, let's start the show. Stephanie Otey, Bruce Marshall, we are here on a Wednesday. And Bruce, good to see you again. Stephanie, good to see you. Bruce, I'm going to ask you this right out of the gate. You are a historian by most accounts. I'm going to call you that. Bills Chiefs, where would you rank that as far as greatest games you've ever seen?
It's right there. I mean, it's right. I can't think of one offhand, any better. I mean, they're usually when I dig deeper into this, I can come up with something, but I'm having trouble on this one. To see a game switch like that so much, and then the extra drama of overtime. It turned out, Kevin, I think the biggest play in that game wasn't a play at all. It was the overtime coin flip. But I have a hard time recalling a game that switched as much as that in the last 2 minutes. I mean, that was really extraordinary. I did see a college game back in 2004 in Reno, Tulsa and Nevada. Anybody who was there will say that was the greatest game they ever saw. So, all right, I've just recalled that one. That might be one. But other than that, this is the greatest NFL game I ever saw.
Bruce, we also saw two great quarterbacks play in that game. That same exact weekend, we saw two veteran quarterbacks take a loss, a very unexpected as well. Do you think that we're seeing the new era of quarterback play in the NFL?
Yes, I think we are, Stephanie. I mean, and especially with my gut feel is Brady could retire, though I have nothing other than my gut feeling with that. But I'd say about a 55% chance he will. We know Big Ben is going to retire. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think will retire, but could end up somewhere else other than Green Bay. So yes, I do think it was a sort of a changing of the guard. It's sort of been happening gradually for a while. We know what Mahomes has been able to do. 2 notes: Josh Allen has arrived, and I think every Buffalo fan should send John Elway a card each Christmas for not drafting Allen a few years ago. They took Bradley Chubb instead. My only regret in the playoffs thus far is that we didn't get to see the Chargers. Justin Herbert belongs on the same stage as these guys. And the matchups would have been a little different had the Chargers gotten in there. I think they would have played Cincinnati first, and you would have had the Raiders play the Chiefs. But Herbert belongs in that group too, and it's just a shame we didn't get to see him in the playoffs. It was a nice story seeing Roethlisberger in there again, but Big Ben, but Steelers weren't doing anything in the playoffs, neither were the Raiders. The Chargers could have won some games here, and I'm a little sad that we didn't get to see Herbert play with these other upcoming and current stars.
Now, Bruce, shifting over to another young quarterback in Joe Burrow, Bengals and the Chiefs coming up on Sunday in Kansas City. The Bengals, look, luckily Joe Burrow didn't get killed back there by the Tennessee defensive line in Saturday's game, but they did enough to beat the Titans and knock them out. Now they get Kansas City, who they just faced a month ago. They beat them at home. They came back and won. We know the Chiefs, another AFC championship for them. They could score at will. You think the Bengals here have a shot to hang with the Chiefs, or Kansas City can roll them?
I think the Bengals have a shot here. Remember, they're the only team that's beaten Kansas City in the last, since midseason. And Burrow really exposed some flaws in that secondary that we saw Josh Allen exploit last Sunday. He threw for over 446 yards. Jamar Chase, we see on the screen, caught passes for over 300 yards in that game, and they won that game 34-31. What impressed me most about Burrow last week, Kevin, and I don't think he's hit quite his ceiling yet in the playoffs here, although he's completing better than 70% of his passes the first two playoff games here. But the way he hung in there against that pressure and getting bounced off of the turf there in Nashville nine times with sacks and hit several other times, but he still hung in there, didn't make any critical mistakes really, and threw that last completion to Chase to set up the last second field goal by McPherson, who's the greatest field goal kicker I think I've ever seen. The other note here is Kansas City. You throw out these two games with Pittsburgh over the last month and a half here, which was outmanned against Kansas City. They have been in scraps every other game. We saw it last week. We saw that Charger game in overtime in December. We saw it in the loss at Cincinnati. We saw it against Denver. What are they doing having trouble with Denver like that in a game the Chiefs really had to win too? So they're not killing teams right now. They are winning, and it'd be kind of risky to predict a game Mahomes loses because you don't want to give him 1 second with the ball and a chance to change the outcome late. But to win a game by more than a touchdown, I don't know. I mean, they've had a lot of trouble putting these teams away lately. So there's evidence since he might be able to hang around.
Yeah, Bruce, that was the question I wanted to ask. Was that spread is at 7.5 right now? And we've seen Burrow get sacked 9 times that last playoff game. He didn't get a touchdown. He really needs some protection up there. So I ask you, do you think that they will be able to take down this Chiefs defense? The two great offenses, but will he be protected?
Well, I don't think the Chiefs bring quite the fury that Tennessee does. Tennessee really upgraded that pass rush there this season. However, when Chris Jones got back in the lineup at midseason, when he was out for a few games there in October, that's when the Chiefs sort of struggled. Steve Spagnuolo did tweak the defense some, and the pass rush got better for Kansas City as the season went along. So yes, they're going to have some issues trying to control that Kansas City pass rush and Jones this week. But the way Burrow hung in there, I mean, he's pretty unflappable. You can get bounced off the turf and come back. And this is what Johnny Unitas used to do. You could knock him down. He kept coming back. And the way he stood in there tight late in the game, that pass to Chase to set up the winning field goal, pretty gutsy. When you get bounced off the turf as much as he did, and you still come back and are able to deliver a win, that shows a lot to me. Not every one of these games you're going to throw for 400 yards. And I don't think he's going to get quite that beating he took last week.
Now, shifting over, Bruce, to the NFC, and this is right up your alley. I mean, NFC West, Niners, Rams. I mean, this is made for you in a sense, Bruce, with these teams out there. California matchup, Northern California, Southern California. So what has it been, do you think? Why do you think Kyle Shanahan has had so much success with Sean McVay?
It's a style matchup here, and it's and I left California, by the way, so I'm no longer there. And by the way, I think the Niners are playing so well on the road because they're so glad to be out of San Francisco. My own opinion, but anyway, the style matchup in most of these games the last 3 years have looked pretty much the same. San Francisco's been able to establish the ground game, and they've had some different quarterbacks. I mean, Garoppolo didn't play quarterback every one of these games either. They won a game with Nick Mullins against the Rams too. But they've been able to do 49er football. It's sort of like the Super Bowl year has carried over the last 2 years for San Francisco in these games against the Rams, running the football, pressuring the opposing quarterback. That's basically the formula for San Francisco when it works best for them. And they've been able to do that against the Rams. They have also, I'll tell you, this team is, they're reminding me of a football version of the Atlanta Braves, Kevin and Stephanie. Remember the Braves kind of caught fire midway through the season, and they kept that running through the playoffs. The Niners were sort of the same. They were struggling by midseason. They turned it around in that game against the Rams. And they have looked into the abyss and pulled themselves out a couple of times in recent weeks, including that game against the Rams 3 weeks ago that got them into the playoffs in the first place. And we're forgetting what Jimmy G did in that game. He took them 88 yards with no timeouts in the last minute and 27 seconds to tie and force overtime, and then they won. And then that game at Green Bay last week, block punts count, and you can win a game like that. So they're very resourceful finding ways to win. They look like they got something going here. So I'd be a little scared if I were the Rams.
And the 49ers, they were the biggest underdog story of the divisional round, stunning the Packers in Green Bay. They were a 3.5 underdog. They are one heading into the conference championship against the Rams, who have defeated the 49ers have defeated the Rams 6 times in a row. Do you think that the 49ers will be profitable here?
I think they might be, Stephanie. I mean, there's reason to look at them. I mean, listen, 3 weeks in a row here. They have gone into LA and won. They have gone into Dallas and won, and they have gone into Green Bay and won. One other note here, and you might, if you watched that game 3 weeks ago against the Rams on January 9, the Rams haven't really rebuilt their local fan base yet. I've talked to people who were at that game, and I watched it on TV. There were more 49er fans, or at least as many, in SoFi Stadium in Inglewood 3 weeks ago as Rams fans. They're coming back this week. The Rams tried to do something with online ticket sales, but they stopped that. It was kind of futile because most people in San Francisco, they have friends or relatives in the LA area anyway, so they can always get tickets. The home field is mitigated. The crowd's going to be about split. This is not going to be like the 49ers going to Green Bay where there are no 49er fans in the stand. Half of them will be San Francisco fans this week. So it's not a normal home field for the Rams.
Now, staying on that for a second, Bruce, a couple things. One, Rams know if they win, they get, in a sense, another home game in the Super Bowl by playing at SoFi Stadium. We know it's a Dodger and Laker town first. Where do the Rams, since they've come back to LA after having that stint in St. Louis, what is the breakdown of Rams fans? Is it still a good base? We know the Chargers have nothing and they share the same stadium, but has it improved with the Rams making the Super Bowl a few years ago? Is it still kind of the same? You have the new stadium. How much has it changed or not?
From what I can tell, more than the Chargers. They came back a year earlier than the Chargers came up too. The Chargers had a little, there were some fans in the LA area anyway, but they don't have a base there really. And you see that in their games, really, they get more visiting fans there. LA used to be a Rams town more than the Dodgers or the Lakers. They were there before either of them. I was there. We had season tickets in the 60s to go to watch the Rams. So I used to go, and it was a Rams city. So they're coming back, but they were gone for more than 20 years, and they lost a lot of that base. So it's a slow process to get it back, and they're not at Lakers or probably Dodgers level right now either. It's going to take them a while to do that. They're further along than the Chargers are, building up the local fan base, but they're not up to where they used to be.
Now, let's look at some college basketball here, Bruce. And look, we were looking at some of the games from last night. Stephanie, you want to talk about the Pac-12 last night, the big game with Arizona UCLA?
Well, yeah, UCLA handed Arizona their second loss of the season. The Wildcats shot 31% after entering ranked 5th nationally, with the team shooting a percentage of 50.1% for the season. So why do you think it was different for them offensively as they were playing against the Bruins?
Stephanie, it's odd in the Pac-12. They've had so many games postponed, and it hadn't hurt Arizona quite. Arizona had a couple of games they didn't look quite the same, but I think it's going to take until into February for this league to really kind of get back on course. I mean, USC's lost a couple of games recently where it looked kind of flat. Oregon lost that game last night, kind of surprisingly, to Colorado. UCLA's played a few more games lately than Arizona, and they really came out at home sharp last night. It maybe will give Arizona a mulligan. They've been so good. And Stephanie, I think one of the ironic things about this season, Tommy Lloyd moves from Gonzaga. I think he might have a better team at Arizona than he did in Spokane, the one he left. There are 3 first-round picks, I think, NBA picks on this Arizona roster. But, you wonder in the Pac-12, I mean, some of these scorelines have been kind of odd lately, and there were so many games postponed there. I wonder if it's going to just take a few more weeks before this league gets back on track and a little bit more predictable. But I wasn't expecting UCLA to roll Arizona like that last night. No, that was a bit of a surprise.
Mm-hmm. And going over to the ACC, a big one tonight. Miami has not lost to an ACC team this season other than Florida State, but Virginia Tech won earlier this month against Notre Dame and North Carolina State. They are favored by 5 points tonight. But the only 2 losses Miami has suffered since December 1st were by 1 point to Florida State twice. So, Bruce, do you think that they will cover in this one?
I think they have a shot, Stephanie. And that game on Saturday against Florida State, I mean, that was a precursor to what Tom Brady did the next day on the football side with the Bucs upstate. They were down 24 at halftime. That was the worst first half I've seen a Jim Larinaga team play since maybe he was at Bowling Green 20 some years ago. But they came back in the second half. They had a chance actually to win on Isaiah Wong's shot in the last few seconds. Wong has picked up his game lately. 20 scored 47 points across the last 2. Charlie Moore, transfer in. He's on his 4th school now. He had scored 21 per game the previous 3. McJusty, transferred last year from Oklahoma. He's put up big numbers all season long. Right now, I think Coach L has this team playing as good as anybody in the ACC, and I'm a little bit surprised that this number hasn't moved a little bit more towards Miami, and I still think it might before tip-off. Virginia Tech has lost 5 of its last 7. They failed to cover 6 of their last 7. They have not gotten the sort of production they were hoping for in the backcourt from Storm Murphy, the transfer from Wofford. He really shot holes in Southern Conference defenses last year. He's not doing that as much in the ACC. They are not getting backcourt scoring, and that's what a Mike Young team usually has had throughout his career at Wofford and the last couple of years at Virginia Tech. I would not be surprised if Coach L goes up there and wins this game outright tonight.
Yeah, it's a big game for Miami after that loss to Florida State. Now let's take a look, Bruce, some Missouri Valley action. Saturday, you had 3 outright winners as dogs, including Missouri State knocking off Loyola. That was a big one. Now you have 3 road favorites tonight in the Missouri Valley. Anything you're leaning towards?
Well, all these dogs, I'm not sure I want to make a case for Evansville tonight, although they did do it over the weekend. They won that game outright against Illinois State. You had a couple more Missouri Valley dogs last night, including an outright win for Indiana State over Missouri State, and Southern Illinois hung in there to get a narrow cover against Loyola. Valpo, we got to get used to this new name, the Beacons, the Boomin' Beacons. They have got something no other team in the country's got. Matt Loddick, the coach, they have 6 double-digit scores on this team, and they have now fully integrated Kobe King, the transfer from Nebraska and Wisconsin. He got activated in mid-December, so they had to fit him into a lineup that was really already humming. And now all of a sudden, King, he's become their top scoring option. Ben Cricky, the big Canadian down in the blocks, they have an inside presence. They can spread the floor. Bradley's not bad, but Bradley's is a slight favorite here tonight. Valpo is off a nice win on the weekend. There's another, so this is a dog. It's a negligible spread, but I think Valpo is worth a look. There's another angle here and throughout the Valley. It's been an over league for the most part this season, and these two teams have been going over consistently. And I think you got a real case for an over here tonight. It's not, you can see on the screen there, not prohibitive, about 137, 138 range. These teams are capable of clearing that. So I think this will be one of the better games of the night. The Boomin' Beacons against the Braves, and I think Valpo and the over might be the way to look.
We can get into some NBA tonight. I know, Kevin, you checked out the Clippers game last night. What were your thoughts on that one?
I'm glad I'm not on the Wizards after blowing a lead like that. You don't get over stuff like that. So had they played a game tonight, I'm not sure how they would react. I'm really curious about the Clippers tonight, coming back from that, and with the second biggest comeback in NBA history. There's Luke Kennard there. I mean, he scored 7 points the last 9 seconds. I mean, that doesn't happen if you're out shooting in the playground by yourself. You can't do that usually. So that's how odd that was. But now you got to come back. You got to go fly down to Orlando 24 hours between less than 24 hours after completing that comeback. I don't know that the Clippers are worth a look tonight. I almost like Orlando here tonight, just because that is going to be such, to try to duplicate that. Now they've done this a few times, not quite to that degree as last night, but they have 3 times this month overcome deficits of 24 or more to win. So they're the comeback kids. Patrick Mahomes has nothing on the Clippers. One note about the Mighty Magic, the not so Mighty Magic. They got their original starting lineup back for the first time in 9 weeks. the other day against the Bulls, and they ended up winning that game handily. And they were only on the court for about 7-8 minutes, and Bamba had some foul trouble. But they've had injury and COVID problems all year. They're not as bad as their record indicates. They're usually in most of these games. And now that everybody's back, Wagner also might be an NBA Rookie of the Year candidate. I think, you don't hear me say this too much, I think Orlando is a play tonight.
Well, I want to stay on the Clippers for 1 second. Bruce, you mentioned the 3 comebacks this month. I think what's so interesting, beating the Nuggets, the Sixers, I know the Wizards aren't great, but the one constant with all of those victories, obviously Kawhi Leonard's out, no Paul George, and yet they're still doing this. It's like, as you would say, like bubble gum and Scotch tape, how they're getting rid of these deficits. It's unbelievable. You're down 35 in the second, down 30 at the half. You still come back and win.
I give Ty Lue a lot of credit here, and he has grown up as a coach. We saw it last year, and they punched above their weight in the playoffs. They had some injuries there too. But what he's doing this season, keeping this team relevant and at the edge of the play. I mean, they're still a playoff team now. They may fall into the play-in round. I'm not sure when George is going to get back there, hoping to get Kawhi back sometime maybe later in March. But the way this team has hung in there without their 2 big guns George has been for most of the last month and a half, he's been out, and Kawhi's not been there all year. They get these 2 guys back before the playoffs. They're suddenly the team no 1 or 2 seed in the West is going to want to see if you've got those 2 guys back. So you're very right. They've shown a lot of gumption, and I give Ty Lue credit for keeping this thing together. And these guys, when they get fully healthy, look out come April, because they might be a handful.
Bruce, another interesting one for tonight is KD and Kyrie are already rolled out as the Nets host the Nuggets, but they still opened up as a big 1.5 favorite, but a huge market move pushed the spread over the fence to +2.5. So are you jumping the fence as well?
I think this is a tricky one here. They lost that game to the Lakers last night. Of course, Davis came back. I have a thought right now of just kind of steering clear from Brooklyn for a while here while they, in the games, and Kyrie, can't play at home anyway, and KD hurting. They have the capability. Harden can always go off, and they can have a big effort like that. But they look to me to be a team that I would sort of want to stay away from, and some inconsistencies. Denver's sort of been like that all year anyway. And if the Joker is a big game, I think obviously Denver is worth a look. But these are 2 teams. I think this is a little bit tricky, and it looks funky to see the Nets as a dog here. But they're shorthanded and they didn't look all that good last night. So I'm not making a case for the Nets. If I did anything, maybe a little bit to the Nuggets, but I think this is one I'd steer clear from.
And another one that had some line movement. Phoenix was a 3.5 point favorite at the open, but now it's laying at 2.5, despite taking most of the action thus far. So the total has also gone from 224.5 all the way down to 222.5. Does this change your mind for this one as well?
Well, we were talking about all these injuries and people out, and Donovan Mitchell's been out lately for the Jazz, so I'd want to know his status, and he's coming back soon. It was a concussion there, so he'll be back soon enough. But without him, they have struggled here lately. In fact, Utah's had some problems lately. Part of it to do with Mitchell not being there, but Phoenix is Phoenix. I mean, they're rolling. They continue to roll pretty well, and I think. If Mitchell's back or if he's not 100% back, that's a negative for the Jazz. Normally I'd jump on Utah plus the points at home, but they've been having a bumpy go here the last couple of weeks. So I'm not sure I would do it tonight.
Yeah. The Jazz had a lot of guys out. I mean, they're running out of bodies pretty quickly. So you got to hope that they can get it straight before they fall further down in the West, Bruce.
Yeah. I mean, you look at a lot of these teams and you see, that they're missing players. I mean, there's another game tonight. Milwaukee's playing Cleveland. The last time these 2 teams played, Milwaukee's whole lineup was out. Some of it was COVID. Middleton had an injury. I mean, they had like 8 guys out. I don't know why they didn't postpone that game back in December, but that's the thing. I mean, some of these teams have been so decimated and the COVID stuff has changed the dynamic here. Hopefully by the time we get to mid-February and around the All-Star break after that, this will settle down and it'll be a more consistent pattern. We'll know guys who are in. This is the problem when you look back at some of these games. You look back, and Milwaukee lost by 29 last time to Cleveland. Wow, you look at that, but then you have to dig a little deeper and say, wait a minute, nobody played that night. So this is a season where those past results, you really got to dig in and see if they mean that much, because a lot of times A lot of these players were out.
Bruce Marshall, always great having you on. NFL money leader on Vegas Insider. Bruce covers everything. Ask him about any sport. He's on top of it. And you can find him at Vegas Insider. Bruce, thank you so much for the time as always. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Stephanie.
All right, there is Bruce, and love talking to Bruce. Haven't had him on for a while. He is just
Stephanie,
a wealth of knowledge about. Ask about soccer, ask about bowling.
Wow,
he's on top. I don't know about bowling, but soccer he's very good at too. But I want to go back to the playoff or the divisional round on Sunday. I want to know your thoughts on this. What did you think about the overtime situation as far as the team that wins the toss, they go down to score, should the other team get an opportunity? What did you think about that whole thing?
I like the idea of changing the rule, but some of the people I've talked with NFL, they like the rule as it stands because it should have been won in regulation. But the idea of a coin flip in a playoff game, after what we saw throughout that game, it just blows my mind that you wouldn't give Josh Allen the ball. So I do like the idea of changing the rule. And also, it'd be such a treat for football fans. Like, come on, like give us some more time. Doesn't the NFL want some more money? Give us some more playing time.
Because I was on Buffalo, and my argument was the other way, where I said, I don't mind the overtime rule for this. Buffalo took the lead. Kansas City went down and scored. Buffalo took the lead. Kansas City tied the game. Kansas City got the ball in overtime and scored. You had 3 shots to stop them, and you couldn't do it. You don't get another opportunity in overtime. You had 3 chances, and you couldn't stop them. And I know it's Mahomes and the Chiefs, but still. Because here's my problem with the overtime. When does it end? If the Chiefs score a touchdown, you say, okay, the Bills get the ball back. See if you could match it in a sense. They score a touchdown. If the Chiefs score again, do the Bills get another opportunity? That's where I'm like, when does it end?
That. It's like stamina. Like who can go the longest? But I will say this was every single team, whether they're still in the playoffs or not, especially the Bengals, were taking notes. They should have passed more time. The Bills should have. They kind of left more time on the clock. Everybody's keeps saying 13 seconds is enough for Mahomes. We learned that. So I think that was a tough lesson. And I know every team in the NFL was taking notes on how to handle that.
You had a stat. It was pretty interesting. It said, and remind me if you have it in front of you, about teams in the championship game, the rematch that actually they fared well, so it worked out for the Bengals.
Yeah, since 2014, there have been 11 rematches from regular conference play, and the winner, 9-2, will win again. So that is a good sign for the Bengals. The reason I didn't like the spread on that is it's at 7.5. Well, the Bengals won that game by a field goal. The Bengals won last week by a field goal. So I'm nervous about them covering, but I do have faith in the Bengals winning it. So I had them outright.
So you think they could beat them in Arrowhead?
Joe Burrow has never lost a playoff game. And I know it's college and all of that, but they have the world behind them. And maybe that's the Ohioan in me saying this. Maybe that's my faith in Burrow, but we've seen Mahomes has been a little iffy this season. He has not been consistent. And I think that the Bengals defense is stronger than the Chiefs defense. So in an offensive battle, I think that will be the edge to get the Bengals the win.
Now, what about the NFC? What do you like there?
This one is a toss-up because I look at how the 49ers have beat the Rams 6 times in a row. Rams look great. I'm leaning more towards Matt Stafford. I know Jimmy Garoppolo he's good on that offense, but the Rams balled out against the Bucs. I mean, the Bucs didn't really show up until that second half, late into it. So I feel better about the Rams against the 49ers. But I don't know. This is a tough one for me.
Yeah, and I just wonder after the Rams, they built that big lead against Tampa Bay last week. Tampa Bay came all the way back. Luckily, they staved them off. I just always look at this, and I don't know about the pressure or what have you, but the Rams, they win, they get the next one at home again. That's not like saying if the game was in Miami or something, they wouldn't try as hard because it's still a Super Bowl. But now you go 54 years, nobody hosting a Super Bowl. Now you have back-to-back years potentially of a team hosting a Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah. And you took out the guy who did it too.
Yeah.
You took out the team who did it. So I like underdogs this weekend, and maybe that's the recency effect. But come on, 3 out of 4, and they were all close, and it could have been 4 out of 4 underdogs winning. So if I had to choose, I am leaning towards taking the dog in that one too. But I have a hard time with this one. This is the one that is making me struggle.
Yeah, we'll see if San Francisco can beat them again. I mean, 3 times this year. That's very impressive if they are able to do it. But again, we'll see. Stephanie, thank you so much again for hopping on the Daily Insider as you do every Wednesday. And we can find Stephanie on Twitter at Steph Otey. You see it there on the screen. Stephanie, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next week. And guess what? We'll know who's in the Super Bowl. So we'll have 2 weeks to talk about this.
Yes. I don't know how we're going to beat last weekend, but man, am I pumped for football this week. Man,
yeah, it should be a lot of fun to see who escapes this weekend. Thanks a lot, Stephanie.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, there is Stephanie Otey. And yeah, I mean, these 2 games this weekend, I'm still a little torn. I side with the home teams. I just can't imagine the Rams losing 3 times to San Francisco. I know the Niners have been living on the edge for a month, beating the Rams, beating the Cowboys, beating the Packers, now playing the Rams again. Sean McVay, we'll see what he could cook up. His opportunity here to finally get over on Kyle Shanahan. But again, we'll see how that whole thing turns out. Now, Stephanie's in New York, and DraftKings is legal in New York. And I'm not sure if Stephanie's seen the goat wandering around the streets, but that goat has the crown on and says, you know what? If you want to take this crown from me, you got to go to DraftKings.com first to score your seat to the Tournament of Champions. That's how you get the crown. The DraftKings Championship Series is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's Tournament of Champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right. He's wandering around New York because DraftKings is now legal in New York. So try to find him. Don't steal the crown from him because he's not going to let it go, okay? He's earned that crown. You could do it too, though, if you go to DraftKings.com, the championship series, and you can be the next GOAT. All right, let's take a quick look at some of the NBA for tonight that we did not hit on with Bruce. We'll roll through some of these. The Hornets, they're 0-8 this season with no rest. They go to Indiana to face the Pacers. Indiana back at home. They're all beat up with all the injuries. Pacers have lost twice to the Hornets this year, but in those first 2 meetings, Indiana was favored, so now they're a dog. Charlotte hasn't won on the second of a back-to-back. They got blown out of Toronto last night. Gordon Hayward's a question mark, so we'll see how that one turns out with the Hornets. Sacramento, they lost by 52 at Boston last night. They had no De'Aaron Fox, granted, but they go to Atlanta tonight to face the Hawks. The Hawks beat the Kings in Sacramento a few weeks ago. Trae Young didn't play in that game for the Hawks. They've had a lot of unders in this meeting, so now, in their matchups, 231.5 the total there. And again, De'Aaron Fox, obviously, that will help the Kings if he comes back. Knicks and Heat, that's the first game on ESPN tonight. Heat laying 5.5 to the old rival, the Knicks. And New York off their loss to Cleveland a few nights ago. The Heat right now, the top team in the Eastern Conference. Pretty amazing when you think about that. Raptors and the Bulls in Chicago. Zach LaVine's back for the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan should be back tonight. He sat out against Oklahoma City. He rested that night. They were on the second of a back-to-back. Toronto off that big win over Charlotte last night. We'll see if Fred VanVleet plays. He was out last night. But the Raptors, good bounce back after they lost to the Blazers. Not looked that good in that loss to Portland on Sunday, but they bounced back beating Charlotte last night. Grizzlies and the Spurs in San Antonio. San Antonio, their defensive numbers have been horrible as a home dog this year. At least the last 7, they've given up 110 or more in all of them. So they've been torching a lot of those games. Memphis, here's a good number for you. Memphis, top team in the Southwest Division. This is only the 5th time this season they're a road favorite. So they've cleaned up as a road dog, but as a road favorite, they're still 3-1 straight up against the spread. Grizzlies beat the Spurs earlier this year in Memphis. Remember, Memphis knocked them out last year in the play-in tournament. So the Grizzlies here laying 4.5. Spurs did beat the Rockets last night in Houston. The Mavericks and the Blazers in Portland, and the Mavs off a blowout loss at Golden State last night. So now they're favored 8-0 to the under with no rest for Dallas. Portland, they lost in the final seconds to Minnesota at home last night. Blazers getting 4.5 here. Huge shootout when these teams played earlier this year. Now that total at 216.5 between those teams in the NBA. And just a lot going on as far as last night. In case you missed it, we discussed it. The Clippers were down 30 at the half at Washington, down 35 towards the end of the second quarter. LA scored 80 points in the second half. They came back. They beat Washington. Luke Kennard had that 4-point play in the final seconds. And the Clippers ended up shocking the Wizards. Washington is totally spiraled out of control, at least at home of late. And another total beat. I benefited from this. The Nuggets and the Pistons in Detroit last night. They had a huge first half, 33 in the fourth quarter, stay under the total of 218.5. So those things happen at times. Denver had 2 points halfway through the fourth quarter. So big night in the NBA. Also Nuggets, Nets. We'll see if James Harden sits tonight. That'll be interesting. After the Nets lost to the Lakers last night, Anthony Davis was back. LeBron was great again. And the Lakers got some revenge for losing at home to Brooklyn on Christmas. But the Nets now, no Durant, no Kyrie at home. See if Harden plays tonight or not. It'll be interesting to see what Brooklyn does here. And Brooklyn hoping for a lot more road games than home games due to Kyrie's status. He can play on the road, but he can't play at home due to his vaccination status. BetMGM, they're the king of sports books. They are legal in New York now. And you could check them out at betmgm.com. You can download the Sportsbook app, enter the bonus code VI bonus for a $25 no deposit free casino game. Again, for new players only. $25 no deposit free casino game plus a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Enter VI bonus on the BetMGM Sportsbook app to receive a $1,000 risk-free bet for your first wager. And BetMGM special offer, bet $20 to win $100 on any sport or game, regardless of your wager's outcome. And you can check it all out now at betmgm.com. They are the king of sports books. And BetMGM just now, they're in the fold there in New York. A lot of other sports book operators there. And BetMGM, they finally joined the party. So they are there. And also another state that will be legal coming up later this week. Great state of Louisiana. They will be having sports book. They will be legal for sports coming up on Friday. So Louisiana, you are now at the party as well. So we congratulate you for that. And obviously more states will be involved. When Florida's involved, we'll let you know, because Florida was involved for about a month and then they dropped off. All right, my thanks to Bruce Marshall for joining us, Stephanie Otey as well. And Bruce, always great information. Find him on Vegas Insider as the NFL money leader. And tomorrow we will have our friend Vince Akins join us, who breaks down the NFL picks, got the trends, and only 2 games, but he'll have plenty of trends for Bengals Chiefs in the AFC and Rams 49ers in the NFC. So all of that will be going on tomorrow at noon Eastern. You can find us again on the Daily Insider right here on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That would be helpful for us and helpful for you. So at least you know when the new videos are coming out. We'll have some best bet videos as well this week for the 2 championship games. So those you could find as well on our YouTube channel at Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching this edition of the Daily Insider. And as always, best of luck with your bets.